Great. I'd say this is a reflection of that you're tired.
We're all tired. Wait a bit. This weekend,
Yeah,
Saturday.
no, it's fine.
Yeah.
I thought you'd talk about that.
Tracy,
I can't get in. This is,
You lie on the floor?
Yeah, angle.
No, that's the wall, that's the wall.
I know, but we were just talking about how tired we were. And
It looks like you're lying on the floor.
camera view makes it appear as though you're totally, sorry. Robin, you're a little silly. Thank you. What were you doing?
okay. All right,
You
so
know, there's a lot.
one,
You're
two,
all sides.
I think the other thing, Yancy,
Yeah.
we gotta get Jessica off this committee. Who's Jessica, you say?
Yeah, she's the
She's
one that's
reporting.
it's recording.
Okay, could you stop recording for a minute?
We've-
Okay,
I don't
so
know.
Jessica hasn't been here 6 months, which I think means that there's a process to remove her from the committee. And the only reason we want to remove her from the committee is it's harder to get quorum. Yeah. And clearly she's,
Totally overwhelmed.
yeah,
Well, there's a lot going on.
that's me, Joe. Okay. Okay, is it 7 o'clock? Yes. Okay, let's call the meeting to order. And I was just talking about Jessica and that she had sort of indicated by her non-attendance that she probably doesn't need to be here, and I'll follow up on that. I'll give her a call and see where we are with
Okay,
that.
I'll look into how that process goes.
Okay, but she could just resign, I think. And the other is that I did have an interview with a young woman that Tracy sent me to, who's a freshman and seems quite interested in joining the committee. She sent her application into the mayor, and apparently the mayor got it, and I'm hoping that Tracy follows up on it and makes sure that she gets an interview and we can get her on the committee. I think she'd be an asset. She seems young and articulate, and the theory is we could have her I don't know what we're doing, so but she's young, she could possibly be here for more than a year. A while, yeah. So
Is she a student at Shorecrest?
yes,
Okay.
she's with Interact, I think.
Oh, really? Okay, great.
So we'll just follow up on that and make sure we add her to the committee. I know Dana can't come tonight and Tamara is not coming tonight. She's exhausted, so I think this is who we are. So welcome. I was gonna ask some question, but I couldn't think of what question it would be.
What flower did you see today?
Well, I saw a million daffodils.
So daffodil in my front yard.
How about you, Linda? What flower did you see today?
Well, I'm trying to think. Beginnings of the early, some early roadies.
Hey. Matt, did you get out today?
Yeah. I'm bad with flowers. I saw a bun though. I saw a rather large bun. I was very excited about that. Very cute.
A large bunny?
Yeah, Adrian and I love spotting buns when we're out on our walks.
Okay, well then I'd like to invite you over to Animal Acres to Peru and get them out of our garden if you so inclined.
Take them home with you, Matt.
Get them out of our vegetables, boy, that's for sure.
Okay. Tracy, did you see any flowers today?
Yeah, I mean, at least where I am, the poppies are coming out like crazy. So, tons and tons of poppies. Of course, I am in LA, so.
Oh,
And how's the weather?
It's about 70 and really windy.
Hmm.
Mhm.
What part of LA are you in?
In the San Fernando Valley.
Okay. All right. We have an agenda that we sent out. I would like to add to the agenda before moving that, Matt had suggested that we go back and talk about, sort of the ordinances. We had sort of, that kind of got dropped, and I appreciated him bringing that back to the table, and I have thought we should raise that question again, so I'd like to add that to the agenda as well, if there are no objections. Is there a move to adopt the agenda?
So moved, adding ordinances to old business.
Okay, I guess it's old business.
We need to second it?
Yeah.
Seconded.
Okay, but okay, everybody okay with this?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. Okay, we have minutes from February 4th. Is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, second?
Oh, second.
Second.
Okay. Any objections? Great. Okay, we have minutes. There's no public comment, right? No.
There's no public. No one hears
Okay.
from public.
I miss people coming to our meetings. Okay. So I thought I'd talk a little bit about the scheduled events that we have that are coming up that are sort of in our wheelhouse. And I sent out I put a flyer on the Google Drive that looks something like this. Okay, I have it. I'll bring it up. It's on my shared documents, and it has a list of the kinds of things that we have 8 things that we're sort of committed to working on. And good news, one's done. The next one is Solarize Kenmore, and again, Kenmore has invited Lake Forest Park to participate with this. We don't really need to do anything there except publicize it so people know that it's coming. And what we can do on that is there'll be a press release, I'm hoping, going out through the city, and I'll send one out also through Shoreline Area News. And they've vetted the contractors. They've brought them in. They're going to do group buying, so the process can be less expensive. So it's an opportunity for people in Lake Forest Park to get solar on their roofs through a very specific program. The only thing that's different between what Lake Forest Park residents have in Kenmore is that Kenmore people actually have a rebate from the city, an additional rebate from the city, which Lake Forest Park residents don't have. And there'll be this happens twice. It happens in April, and then it happens again on May 21st. So, and the next one is that I put this on here in the great hopes of the painting the mural, and we'll come back and talk a little bit about that. It's tentatively scheduled for Earth Day in the afternoon, and then the Arbor Day guided walk. We really don't have anything to do there. That's the good news. We just there's going to show up, and there's going to be 3 things going on. The Parks Department is going to have the new park. The garden tour is going to have a model of the artwork that's going into Horizon View, and then there'll be a tree walk. And so we're just sort of advertising it and sort of piling on. And then there's going to be a presentation called Get Ready for Fire Season. We don't have yet, but we've had promises of a pulmonologist who will come in and talk about the impact on your lungs. Somebody from the fire department and somebody from the emergency operations center. So it'll be sort of the impact of smoke, how do you prevent wildfires, and what do you do to get ready? And that's on May 3rd, which turns out to be International Wildfire Day. Who knew? I mean, that's why it's there. and again, there'll be some publicity, and it may be that we need to, we're gonna need a moderator there, somebody who introduces folks, and wondered if there's anybody who thought they'd love to do that. Well, I'll run that up I'll strong arm you. And it's just, it's an opportunity to talk about the Climate Action Committee and, excuse me, and then introduce the panelists. It's not too bad.
Sarah, I'll backstop it, but I'd rather have one of you do it. So
Okay. Oh, good. Okay. Well, we'll check. Well, maybe Tamara will do it. We should have someone to do it, right?
He's not here.
I know.
Sorry, that's terrible.
Yeah, okay, I'll check around. And then we're doing some work with Octavia Butler. There's a new book coming out called The Life and Times of Octavia Butler. And she is, again, I put this on here, she's tentatively scheduled to come. The author is
Wow.
tentatively coming. And then there's going to be a walk from it's sort of a journaling and walking that the Arts Council is interested in doing, and somebody who joined our committee by saying, walking up to the table and saying, "What are you doing here?" And then we talked about it. She said she wanted to be part of it. So she volunteered to do this journaling walk. We're still working on a mural. It's the big mural of Octavia Butler, but we're sort of encouraging that activity. There was going to be another presentation, which is sort of on pause now, a woman from Seattle University. And then the other things that we're sort of involved in is the Lake Forest Park garden tour, where we need people to sit at a table. The farmers market. They've asked us what is a good date for the farmers market, and somebody suggested the crafts fair where we had so much fun before, but that date is taken. So I don't know what is a good time. So we should. So is there anybody who has a sense about? Okay, I was
You
thinking.
have the list of what the different, they all have themes, right?
Not all of them. Sometimes it's just by food. There's Father's Day, which is apparently a big day, but that's right after the garden tour. It seemed like too much.
Actually, that would probably be a good time because it's a kind of a known quiet time. And so for me, that would be a time that I could certainly staff.
Okay, I'll check Father's Day. And otherwise, I was thinking mid-September. Give ourselves a break, right? Take the summer. The other thing is the picnic in parks on there, and then the ongoing book club. We're finishing. It's blanked. What's the name of the book? It won't work. No,
Nothing works.
when nothing works.
When nothing, yeah. When nothing works.
When nothing works is what we're reading, and we're meeting on Wednesday. And the next book is the Nutmeg Tale.
That makes curse.
Nutmeg's Curse.
Bunch of short parables, apparently. Yeah.
So it's fun. Just come. So that's what's on this sheet. Yeah.
So I want to share one other thing that is happening that isn't on our list, but it ties into fire season. The NEMCO team and Shoreline Auxiliary Communication System, the radio club, are having a meeting together on Firewise. And it's how to make your house more resilient to fire. And if anybody wanted to attend that, it's going to be at the Shoreline Fire Station over on Highway 99 on April 12th, starting at 9 o'clock and going at least till noon. It may trail on a little afternoon.
Well, does the NEMCO team have something they'd like to? There's a question about getting ready for fire season. Is if we want to have people say, can we put up booths? Do they have something they'd be interested in?
They're giving that entire presentation.
Right.
So
But sort of in addition, do they have things?
yeah, there's good. I don't know. I've never been to this before. So
Okay.
I mean, I'm a part of NEMCO, but I don't know what this presentation is. I believe it's the fire the emergency response people are going to be talking about how to improve fires, wildfire safety issues from urban wildfire. So, trees over your roof type of questions. And but I don't know, I'm not leading the presentation, I'm going as an attendee. I will report back if I'm the only person there, that's fine too.
Okay, we're getting Brian in here.
Yay.
Okay. Okay, so there are a series of things that are coming up. That's my phone.
Just not me.
Yeah, sorry, apologies. So, Mimi, can you talk about the Climate Policy Advisory Group?
Sure,
Because you were at the last one.
yes. Do you think, does anybody want sort of a broader context? Or does everybody know what's going on?
Why don't you do the broader context?
Anybody? Okay.
Comprehensive plan.
Yeah.
Yes, I'm trying to figure out where to start. So this is we're on this CPAT committee. What's it called? Climate Policy
Advisory.
Advisory Team. The three of us, Sarah, and I, and so it's to help create a policy document for the comprehensive plan. And just so everybody knows, there seems to be always questions about what a comprehensive plan is. And it's really growth management, trying to incorporate the values of the community into that plan. And so there's all kinds of things that incorporated and try to look 20 years sort of into the future, 10 to 20 years. At least that's my understanding. If I'm wrong, somebody correct me. Is that right? Okay.
Vision of the community, yeah.
Yeah.
Work progress.
So a lot of housing,
Management.
it's been paying attention to a lot of housing issues lately. But this latest thing is that they need to incorporate, or we have funding, we got funding to incorporate the CPAT, this climate element into the comprehensive plan to incorporate both a separate unit as well as perhaps policy things all along the document. So that was in February. We got awarded, or the city got awarded a $500,000 grant to complete this climate element for the comprehensive plan. And these funds are from the Washington State Climate Commitment Act. So they are holding steady here, unlike some things. So it funds climate planning following state guidance for the climate element. And the goal is that this should result in reductions in greenhouse gas emissions and enhance resilience to help avoid adverse impacts of climate change. So that's the state's goal for these things. So Cascadia Consulting Group was the consultant that was hired to work on this with the city. And members of the tree board, members of the climate action committee and comprehensive plan are part of this committee. And Sarah Ann and I serve on behalf of the climate action committee. So it started out, there's a lot of significant pieces that have come up so far. There's been a policy audit to see where the gaps are, including looking at the climate action plan that we all created. And a number of other city documents. That was back in November, December. There's been a climate impacts summary memorandum. And if any of you guys, for all of us who were at the thing on the Green Fair, there was a piece, that double-sided thing, what is it, climate element. That's really kind of nice. And if we should send out people a digital copy of the city, because the city has the copy of the digital, yeah, right? Yeah. Anyway.
We can add it to your
Yeah.
CAC section of
That would
it.
be great, yeah. Because it kind of summarizes impacts and things in a nice, concise way. There's a community survey that you should have all gotten in your email or in a postcard to give them feedback. And it's open, I don't know how long it's open.
April 10.
April 10th. So that's coming up. So encourage your friends and neighbors in the city to fill it out. It's feedback that will help them understand the city's priorities. There is a city webpage for the project. It has some good information about what this committee is all about. And in our last meeting, they shared with us, there's a lot in the last meeting that we tried to process and keep up with. But vehicle miles traveled, sort of as part of, people in the city and how much they're traveling, that's part of their greenhouse gas survey. That's all gonna be part of a big report that will be shared with us, when it's done. There's also the travel market assessment document, and that's to understand travel behavior of all the people traveling to and from our jurisdiction. So there's number of vehicle trips, trip length, purpose, etc. One of the things that we discussed for vehicle miles traveled was trying to develop pathways for getting to and from light rail and to and from the town center as transportation hubs, because that would minimize these like short trips that everybody takes. This last mile program. So again, the full report is being finalized. They were sharing it with us to get feedback. And that's kind of where we're at. Is there anything else?
Well, I thought the most interesting thing from it was that there has been a reduction in, not in miles traveled, but in emissions because of the increase in electric vehicles. And so that's an interesting piece. Was that?
There's also along with that is this reduction in airline travel or the emissions from that. But that really, when you ask the question, it's really about the change in efficiency of aircraft and a reduction in that. I don't know if there was a reduction in our travel, but really that was a huge piece of it, was the efficiency of actual aircraft. So it didn't really reflect anything that we did. As a community. But anyway, things to kind of track as we look for differences over time. Tracy?
Yeah, so I meant to ask you about that airline piece. Did they actually do a better methodology than which King County did, which is literally, did it per capita over the entire company, over the entire county, and then scaled for income?
I don't remember what they did for aviation.
It's
They were trying to do things where possible, and when the full report comes out, I think we can look at that. But they were trying to do things where they could that were specific to Lake Forest Park.
Okay,
Not
that's
like
really good
it's
to
but yeah,
Okay,
because they
thanks.
didn't have any information about how much we travel, right? They were using that same thing.
Okay. So they're gonna do, they're also gonna do some public outreach, right? There'll be a open house, and then there'll be a
Focus groups.
focus groups. They're doing 3 focus groups. They're targeting the youth, which will probably be through the Interact Club, the Commons, and
Were they doing Rotary or who? There's 3. Yeah, I don't remember. I was meant to look that up.
I forget what the third one was, but it was I don't think it was the Rotary. I think it was somebody else, but I recall. So, but this is a very compressed program. We're supposed to be done by June, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Is it June yet? Dana's not here, but so I'm going to report on the climate hub, and so we're in this. It's really the same report I think as last time. We're working with 2 artists, one of whom is in Costa Rica. She's on vacation in Costa Rica. She's coming back, and we have the wall. And as I don't know if you've walked by, you see it's been primed a bright blue. We put up for the Green Fair some materials back up again. The plan is that the final design of the mural will be on Thursday. And then one of the artists has a projector, essentially an overhead projector, but it's very big. and they'll take the design and put it up on the wall and then trace it. And then there's a essentially a coloring map. And there's an organization called Urban Artworks, who the only thing that the mall owners asked was that when we painted the wall, we have insurance. And the Urban Artworks people have insurance. So they're going to be the people who sort of bring in the tarps and the paint and the scaffolding, I guess, for some of the top pieces of it. The lettering that says Climate Hub, we're thinking will have some texture to it, probably from one of those a sign making company that does it, like the sign for Third Place Commons. That I think it's foam cut and then painted or something on the top, give it a little texture. This young woman I interviewed for the position here in this committee said she thought she could get all her friends to come and help paint. The problem that we're having is we don't want to encourage people to come and sign them all up if in fact this mural design isn't done. So we should have it on Thursday, and then we should be able to proceed or not. But it's sort of hard to get. But I think, Brian, you probably have more experience with this. I think Urban Artworks does the scheduling people. Is that what they did with the mural on over the Jersey barriers?
I wasn't involved in that, sorry.
Oh, anybody here involved in that? No, well, that's my understanding is, so they'll put out a notice, or we'll put out a notice with them, and then you say, I'd like to paint from 4 to 5 or 5 to 6 or whatever. And then when the projects, and then the other thing that Urban Artworks does, will come in and fix it afterwards. You know, the kids who drew outside the lines, they'll be touch it up. And the other thing that they wanted to do was to add afterwards, the two artists wanted to add critters to it, so that it would be sort of like a where's the snail, where's the children could be involved in. So maybe we should just talk about the thriving communities right now.
Thriving Earth Exchange.
Thriving
We're
Earth.
still we introduced it last time.
Mm-hmm.
We're
To this
moving
group.
forward.
Yeah.
I think to you guys, did we talk about it before? We're trying to get a project going with AGU, Thriving Earth Exchange, to have somebody do the GIS for a map of Lake Forest Park that we can then share. Ryan, you're here, good. Any community science type projects that are there, we can share the data through this portal. So people can click on things and go, oh, look at all the wonderful community science or projects that we can be a part of, and sort of develop community energy around it through showing all the great things that are happening. It can be a dashboard for the weather data from Brookside and anything like that. So actually, if anybody has a list of things like that that we should include in our little proposal to get this project going, send it to me or Sarah so I can include it. We have like 2 weeks to actually submit this proposal.
I found Purple Air, and it had 20 years of air quality in places that were in Lake Forest Park.
That's the air quality. That's
That-
sensor.
Yeah, yes, but I think Puget Sound Energy has this, different from Puget Sound air quality. I mean, the
Yeah.
air quality did the one in Lake Forest Park. Maybe they monitor the same.
So all the monitoring data can become part of it. Yeah.
I was just going to say that the Stewardship Foundation, what I've been doing is basically making like a hot map of the creeks and the health at certain locations based on the biological and chemical stuff. Is that the kind of stuff you want?
Yes.
I'll just
Yes.
send you I'll just send you the link then to our website.
Awesome. Thank you.
And then the notion, if we got $8,000, we could get a touch screen. So people could come up and just, there's something at the hangar in Kenmore that's a touch screen that people use. It's about $8,000 to put one in, and it really would make it really a dynamic piece. And then I think what we have to figure out is how to link it to that climate action plan actions. So that there's a link there. But that'll be harder, but yeah, Tracy.
So I don't know if this is going too far afield, Mimi, but is the guy who does birds in like Forest Park, is that data interesting?
Yes, that's on my list. We talked to him at the Green Fair.
Okay.
John
Byrne.
Yeah, although isn't he the one that said that he doesn't, anyway, yes,
yeah.
the eBird data and iNaturalist type of stuff, yeah, that would be great to
Okay.
incorporate, yeah.
But the streams, the weather people, the weather, Brookside Weather Station.
Restoration activities, and the idea that individuals could share their own efforts also on there if they wanted to. So
It's a real opportunity for us, I think, to go ahead and do that. Okay, I'd like to just talk about the Green Fair for just a minute. And are we, so what were your observations about the Green Fair in general? With fewer people, right? That was
Yeah,
an
I was gonna say, I was only there for the last couple hours, but it was fewer people than the year before by a lot, it seemed.
anything. I thought there were fewer children. Nobody wanted to color our fish.
I got somebody to color the fish.
Oh, okay. When I was there, nobody was coloring, but it seemed like there were fewer children than, for example, the farmer's market. Right.
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. What did you hear people saying, either at our booth or at other booths? Hear any conversations going on?
The survey,
Yeah.
I'll say that much, because we talked about getting people to do the survey.
Mhm.
So Cascadia Climate Group, CCG, who were the ones doing the survey, were there also, for those of you that weren't there. And so I was surprised at the number of people that hadn't seen the survey yet.
Yeah.
So that was a good thing that we reached additional people.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Several of the folks that I talked to hadn't seen the survey, but they didn't live in Lake Forest Park.
Right.
So, I didn't actually get anyone new to sign up for the survey because whenever I had enough of a conversation, they didn't live in Lake Forest Park.
Mhm.
We did get 6 people signed up to be on our mailing list, or
Nice.
Climate Hub or the other, so there was some activity there. So
I think more people came that were actually manning other booths than were actually just randomly off the street. So in my view, it was more of a conference with the occasional passerby coming in than an actual fair. But I mean, that has its own value, right? Because basically I talked to like the Metro people a lot. I talked to Cascadia a lot and learned a lot of things that basically I didn't know before. So in as much as basic information was transferred, I think that happened.
okay. Well, we have scheduled the garden fair and the farmers market and fire season, where we have an opportunity to engage with people again. Is there something we learned that we ought to remember? What is it that we're trying to accomplish at these places where we're engaging with one-on-one with folks?
This one was hard, I'm gonna say. Last year, at least I had conversations with people about climate, about things, and Matt and I had a special conversation with one group of people or one couple, but those were the kinds of conversations you want to have, but I didn't feel like any of that when I was there, and none of that happened this time. Was it a different time of year? Or is this always, was it earlier this year? No?
We gave things away last time. We had the giveaway, the soap. We gave away some
In bags?
And then
bags.
the little pencils.
We
You
had
could stick in
pencils. Yeah,
and
so we
grow
had,
your seeds.
right, so maybe a giveaway. Well, we don't have no budget. Do we have a budget?
Well, I didn't think that the reason people weren't coming to our table was we didn't have anything to give away. I just didn't think there were that many people there.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You know,
I think, I'm sorry.
go ahead, please.
When we're thinking about our goals, it's important to keep in mind like what are the likely demographics for events like this? Like, you've got people who are, skewing like older, people who are into gardening, people who, are, environmentally conscious, and I think that when you look at that group of people, a lot of those people are, feeling kind of beaten down right now. Um, and I think that they're, like I myself, like talk to everyone that I run into about how like, is electoral politics dead? Like is there, and I think that it's fair to say like if we want to accomplish something, it's important to like try to set what we want to accomplish within the scope of like what can you accomplish with, a group of like wealthy retired gardeners who also are feeling powerless around the where this country is going. Like what's a good goal for those people to aspire to?
Well, that sounds like the garden tour table that's coming.
Well, I mean, a lot of the events there's crossover, right? Like we run into a lot of the same people, but the question is like, what would we want those people to do? Like I had a great conversation with a guy who's like, oh yeah, like I'm all electric, and I was like, this guy was like had so much to teach me about just, he clearly was with it, and I was like, okay, like I don't have anything to teach you. Like what you know, if so many like if you're preaching to the choir, um what does the choir need to be doing differently? Like, I don't know.
I was
You know,
also thinking, I didn't see a whole lot of publicity from the city about the event. And I think in past years, I've noticed there was more of that for, a few weeks leading up to it. And that might have had something to do with it also.
Yeah, they did.
I guess, I don't know.
So I think Matt has a really good point, and that nothing we do can be taken out of the context of everything else that's happening. And in light of that, having community events where people come together and feel some level of empowerment is absolutely essential. And in light of that, maybe we start looking at, again, hyper-local types of activities in collaboration with other community groups. Focusing, for example, on local foods. Local gardens, local foods, where can you get produce that's grown within 50 miles of where you live, or set some arbitrary point. But just start promoting hyper-local food as reducing the entire carbon chain, if you will. For instance, if the difference between buying basil you grew in your backyard or basil that was flown up from Mexico is a huge carbon footprint offset. But since we're not going to have flights up from Mexico, we may as well learn how to grow the food locally. So win-win.
Well, that's interesting.
Lentils, a great Washington crop. Many great meals you can make with lentils. And it's so I'm trying to think of how we will have the Solarize events. I think we should continue to promote things like hot water heat pumps, reducing the cost of operating your house, whether that's by insulating, improving windows, improving your appliances to minimize costs, with the understanding that some of those things may become the finances of a lot of people might change tomorrow. Hard to say. I don't know. Well, I think we're just gonna have to stay adaptive and change our outreach depending on what's available to change.
Is it the sense of the group that it continues to be important that the Climate Action Committee is out there having conversations with people at public events?
So the other thing that
Obviously, dude.
people don't know that there is a climate action committee or even what it does, and so. That's the conversation that I also had, it was opening up with, hi, we are from the climate action committee and do you know about this? And then connecting the dots to the climate, to the CPAC. To the climate element and kind of letting them know about the process. That's what one of the things I was trying to do, because I think it's important. To get people's buy-in, if
Right.
they understand what, there's a history, we didn't just like pull stuff out of the hat. Yeah, so. But there weren't a lot of people to share that with. Maybe there were enough to make it work. But the climate hub, what was the feeling from that? Cause that was also. A piece of what was going on
Well,
there.
people are excited about it. They want to paint. They really want to paint. And then I think people are eager to use it as a forum for their issues. So the Rotary wants to do pollinators and the Stewardship Foundation wants to put up their information. And we have to, so that's a piece that Dana hasn't quite figured that piece out, how we manage that. But I think people are eager to see something there. Then, so, it's that, and we get a lot of sort of individual conversations, not a couple individual conversations. Okay, well, I'm encouraged that we still want to go out and talk to people.
Well, yeah, I would say, it really doesn't cost us much to table at events. Like, we're volunteers and like we've got a bunch of stuff already. We've got how many of those salmon stuff. And like I don't mind spending, a couple hours every couple weekends doing something like that. I think that the question would be like, well, if we had other work that was, like we were talking about, like, oh, like if we are, working on, getting legislation passed or something, and it's like, oh, we have to choose between these, then like, yeah, but right now it's like we're not doing a lot else. So I think that the opportunity cost of spending time tabling is pretty low. And so we even, like Mimi said, if we just talk to like a handful of people who didn't know about it, like that's still positive.
Progress in the community.
And we must remember that our major recommendation is to hire a climate action manager, and that's always a conversation to have with people as the budget comes forward and surveys get taken.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm encouraged by that. Okay. Then the next thing we wanted to do was talk about ordinances. And I think there was a committee doing some ordinances and they lost their mojo.
Doing it, and I was supposed to be reaching out to Tracy, and I'll be entirely honest, I've been completely overwhelmed since early November of last year, and so the window of opportunity I hope to have didn't appear.
I can't imagine why. What happened November of last year?
My memory escapes. Details elude me. I'm just going to say time has passed. And I honestly don't see, I know for the next month, I'm tightly scheduled roughly through the 4th of July. My time is really pressed. So I'm happy to either pick this up again in July or to step back and leave the opportunity to other more capable hands who have time available in the near future. But realistically, between now and middle of July, I'm pretty hammered.
Well, let me ask this question. Is there low-hanging fruit? Because I was trying to figure out if I could show you this picture, but I can't. When you drive in Seattle, they have healthy streets. And they just made them. There were no ordinances. I mean, they just said this is a health and it only local traffic, and you had to yield to pedestrians and Tracy.
We just passed that Healthy Streets ordinance. And so we have it on the books. Any neighborhood can apply. And there's even a map now of which streets qualifies healthy street potential. You can't be a cul-de-sac and you can't be an arterial, basically. But yeah, I think we're going to try our first one with Brookside Boulevard. Not Brookside Boulevard. No, it's the street that runs parallel. The other, the hypotenuse of the triangle, as it were. I think it's 174th. I don't know what it is. Yeah,
Perkins? It isn't Perkins?
not Perkins.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
178th? No?
No, it is Brookside. I'm just crazy. It
Yeah.
is Brookside. Yeah. Okay.
So they're thinking about, is that where, that's the Presbyterian Church in Lion Creek?
No,
Brookside?
it's not that street. It's the one that's, the Brookside Triangle there. 178th is one, Brookside is the other. It's that third side, which I just can't remember what the name is off the top.
44th.
Yes, that's it.
So the proposal, I mean, could we go to a couple of neighborhoods and say, what's the process? Tracy, you've got a process?
The process is basically you should get 75% of the people who live on that street, well, households, I guess is better, to agree to it. Then the petition goes to, I believe, and Yancey, you can correct me if I'm wrong, to Mark Hoffman.
Yeah, I don't know specifically, but that's where I'd send it. Side.
Can you
Right.
send us the procedures, piece
Is,
of paper?
is there something on the code that you're referencing that already exists to have this done, or is this something that needs to be made? Or
No,
is this administrative decision? By the
No, it's in the
director?
healthy street. It's in the ordinance itself. So I just don't have it off the top of my fingers here. So, but yeah, I mean, it eventually goes to the traffic calming committee.
But we know we did pass a healthy streets ordinance in this.
Yes, we did. It was last fall.
Okay, well,
And you would like to know the procedure for getting that done.
so what other streets? Does the 44th sounded like one? Are there other streets where we just say it either connects? I think what we would be looking for from the Climate Action Committee is that it gets people safely from one place to another, right? Are there other streets that sort of come to mind that maybe we talk to the neighbors ourselves? Or we include in our next outreach how to create a healthy street?
Yeah, I think that'd be good. Right. So yeah, I think legislatively, nothing else needs to be done, really.
Okay. Well, in Seattle, they put up bumps,
Mhm.
speed bumps and markings and signs. Is the city gonna do that too?
Yes. I don't know about the bumps part, but certainly, at least based the signs in the middle of the street saying that this is a healthy street kind of thing. Yeah.
Seen a couple of things. There's some up where I'm.
Yeah.
That's at first, and they put in the
Yeah.
bumps. They've narrowed the inlet, big signs, and then I've seen. I'm not sure if that was in Seattle, but they just put out a series of 3 buckets, 3 planters that stick out into the street alternatingly, so you have to weave between them.
Mhm.
So, I mean, I think that might have been Shoreline or Mont Lake Terrace or somewhere that that was a cheaper version of doing that rather than
Yeah,
putting in the bump infrastructure, but
Right.
it's kind of traffic.
that'd be very interesting.
Roundabouts everywhere.
Like to do my street.
Right. I mean, the legislation doesn't specify, of course, to that level of detail, and I think the reason we need to really push this is the traffic calming group has not actually thought about what to do. So it'd be really helpful to have a test street to actually do some of this stuff on.
And who is the traffic calming committee?
Well,
Is it a leg?
is it you, Yancey? And Chief Harden?
He
Yeah.
says, no, it's not.
Oh, he says no. Okay. So I know it's Chief Harden and Mark at least. I don't know who else is on.
Okay,
Yeah.
but the chief is on it?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, that would be something. We could put the sign up that they show in Seattle and say, do you want this to be your street? And then list the criteria. And
Mhm.
I mean, I'd like them. I don't know. I had a moment the other day I should share with you is I have a son who's 46. So when he went to Brookside School, I wouldn't let him ride his bicycle because it wasn't safe. And it's still not safe to ride a bicycle. A lot of people have talked about it that entire time. Okay, are there other ordinances that you think that are just sort of low hanging fruit that we could sort of begin to sort of think about at least? Heard from other places?
I feel like at one point I asked about idling and somebody said, "Oh, I think there's some sort of anti-idling on the books," but they couldn't find it or identify it. And I mean, that's just something that like I see a lot, you see somebody like sitting in their car in the parking lot of the town center and they're just running their car for, and it's like, I get it if it's really hot or really cold out, but like a lot of people are just running their car for, 20 minutes just because. And I feel like it would be good to have, even just, something as simple as signage, like when you go to get on a ferry, there are all those signs, or, like when you're in the certain gas stations will have like, don't idle while you're in line, like just something
Yeah.
like that, I feel like would be helpful.
Go ahead, Ann.
So, by Lake Forest Park Elementary, and I'm not aware if it also happens at the other elementaries, because this is the one that I am impacted by. Especially in rainy weather, there's a line of cars that just parks, and I
I
had my
remember you mentioning that, yeah.
find the map locations on this, because people come and they just park. It's on 37th Ave Northeast, and they block it for long distances. And traffic cannot go southbound. But they're all idling their cars, waiting to turn left and go into the school. And they're headed southbound because otherwise they'd be blocking the arterial. They can't back up onto Ballinger. There's only a couple of car slots coming in from Ballinger, but they, yeah, DNA units, that's different. Okay, so some kind of a monitoring, just do some kind of a survey of what's happening. How many cars are there? When are they there? Why are they there? And if they're all idling for 10 minutes or 20 minutes to pick up a child, that's a huge amount of emissions at a school. Just exactly where you don't want to be pumping that out into the air. And a significant impact to the neighborhood for, we have buses, that's actually a reasonably calm neighborhood, except when people are driving through it to pick up students.
Well, I found that working with Matt McLean if I ask him about an ordinance, he's pretty good at finding it. So I'll ask and see if there is a no idling ordinance, and then we could do some outreach on it. Sort of. Does an electric car idle? It doesn't, right?
It just stops.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, a lot of newer model, even ICE cars will like have something where when you are stopped, the engine shuts off to comply with, new regulations. But, as Anne said, like a lot of cars don't have that.
Mhm.
So
and-
another thing we've been discussing is for retrofits or new builds, having the wiring installed to allow an EV charger to be an EV charging location. So the 230 basically increase the panel so that it can accept a circuit that would permit use of a 230 volt EV charge system. Level 2 charger.
Have you heard that in other places or just?
I think it's being rolled out in the city of Seattle, but I'd have to check.
Okay.
And it would be in a number of cases, even something like installing solar panels, people are finding they have to improve use a larger box because they will be using more electricity.
Oh, and this is where I wish we really had Calvin still, because we could ask our permit enforcement person right now, but the city council adopted the 2022 energy and building codes, and I don't know if it was part of that. It may have been.
If they adopted that code, then the issue, then, and it was part of it, then the issue would be telling
Already
the
done.
story.
Yeah.
So who's our building inspector now?
We
Oh.
have a third-party contractor, so we can ask them questions that aren't related to the permit. Which is pretty helpful.
Okay. Can you do that for us? Find out if
If
the
if
20,
somebody sends me an email, I can forward it to
Okay.
Bobby and see if he has an answer.
okay. Are there any other sort of low hanging fruit that you've sort of thought about in the ordinance?
I don't know if
Green.
this is low hanging, but basically, it would be good to get an interlocal agreement with the water district, that is, say, the Lake Forest Park Water District, about McKinnon Creek.
Is that walking in McKinnon Creek?
Walking in McKinnon Creek, yeah.
You know, now we know people on that board. There's a pathways, there's a, yeah. Okay. Who,
I think
Brian, are you on the water district? Who's on the water district? Dana?
Yeah, Dana.
Mud.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else? Okay, let's think about that. That's a good one. Okay,
Yeah.
so somebody else had their hand up. I'm sorry. You go ahead, Matt.
just as another possibility, I mean, I know we've already talked about like gas powered lawn equipment. And that's not something that we can like ban outright, but I think that especially if we started a conversation about it, we could, the Northeast Seattle Tool Library just opened their new location in Shoreline. And I think that, like they have a good, sustainable community that's all about like, hey, we will lend you electric tools. You can get electric lawnmowers, rent them for free and stuff. And so, get a conversation going about, maybe um, restricting the use of gas powered lawn equipment, and then kind of turn that as a conversation starter into, getting people into the tool library and, sustainable tool practices.
Get you. I'm trying to think of what the structure is. You probably couldn't restrict people from using tools they already own, but you
Yeah.
could probably restrict the sale of tools. Is that right? Am I?
Well, even if you did, I mean, we've only got one shop in town that sells tools. And they
Yeah.
already line of electric, they have the primo electric tools. And anybody can go over to Home Depot and buy whatever they want there. So I don't think there's any value in restricting sales. I think the localized hardware is doing absolutely a bang up job of providing access to electric tools, high
Yeah, I
quality.
think, yeah.
Maybe we should invite them to go to the garden tour and show off their tools.
I think, you know,
Yeah, I was hoping to kind of crowdsource like again, banning the sale doesn't really help, but are there any other thing, like rules that we could, limitations or something? Tracy, do you have any?
We had been thinking about doing a tool buyback. So,
Okay, yeah.
yeah, in the same way that, there are gun buybacks. The idea is that you bring your gas powered thing, you get like a $50 voucher or something like that, or something. That's not it's not the cost of the tools. So we don't want people buying used stuff and bringing it in, right? We want people to bring in the stuff that's in their garage and basically just turn that in. So,
Yeah, I mean, if we're already talking about working with Ace, we could like, try to give them a voucher to get an electric lawnmower at Ace or whatever.
right. So,
ordinances that apply to contractors. Because really, the people who are using a lot of gas powered equipment in our city are contractors who are coming in to mow lawns and do yard work. And if we imposed a noise ordinance, then they can't really use unmuffled equipment. And there's some people doing some work at my neighbor's house who had a chop saw, which is louder than any chainsaw I've ever used. I mean, I haven't heard a chainsaw sound like that unless the spark arrestor was out. It was amazing, so. And just a noise ordinance actually addresses a whole lot of the emissions, because you can't achieve the noise depth thresholds without using electric.
Well, it would be good to think about this, and Anne, are you thinking that in July you might be able to pick this back up again?
Yeah, it's, well. Time has no meaning, and I
Right.
don't know what the future holds, but that's the first time that I would be able to pick it up, and I would certainly try to.
Okay,
I would.
I'll leave it on the agenda and we'll talk about it, and I will ask, I'm gonna ask Matt about the no idling. We'll talk to the chief about the safety group, whatever that is.
Traffic calming group.
Traffic calming about how to get healthy streets. We'll send you an email asking about if you can find out if the 2022 energy building code includes what? Oh, retrofit for charging stations. We'll just talk a little, oh, and there was and talk to the water district. We'll assign Dana to talk to the water district. You don't come, you have to do things. Okay. Okay. Are there other, we should keep thinking about this. We'll put this back on the agenda as a regular item so we come back to it. The other thing is that I think then one of the things I was trying to figure out is if we have these things coming up, and the question of whether or not we want to have, how do we increase the number of volunteers we have, and if that's good for us, if it's worth the effort to do things. We have a list. Linda had pulled it up for me, and of sort of the people who had said they'd volunteer for things. It's a little old, but we could write them a letter and say, here are the things that we're doing. Would you want to join us? Do you think that has value?
Yeah, I think getting people together in community, just talking to each other right now, I think that has value. I think that's.
Okay. I'm gonna put
We're
that
not
back on
really
my
doing
list.
the whole thing right now.
Okay. Okay, the other thing that we have is this walk in Horizon, though. I don't know if we want to do anything in Horizon View at the tree walk. We could go up there, we could. I never know what to do.
Table.
Yes,
Have a table.
have a table, put up our stuff.
ABT, always be tabling.
Well, who wants to go to this table? It's a Sunday afternoon at 1 o'clock on April 27th. Tracy. Okay. I'll be there. Because Mark's there. Are you kind of raising your hand, Matt,
No,
or just?
I can't. I have food not bombs.
Okay, well, this is a good thing to send the note out to people saying this would be something you could volunteer for.
T-shirts, say, ask me about the climate action committee on
We have no budget.
them. Print T-shirts, $50.
How many t-shirts do you get? One? Okay,
Depends on how many people are there. 3 T-shirts, $10 a piece
Oh.
at a print shop.
that's a pretty good idea. I was thinking stickers, so. Some other,
Lake Forest Park stickers are nice.
yeah,
Community pride.
Class.
yeah. It's plastic, right? So we move things around, so I think we're close to the end of this meeting. Are there things that we should be talking about? Are there things that we didn't talk about that we need to? Okay. Move to adjourn the meeting. I always think that meeting should last an hour, so we're close. Okay, meeting adjourned.
Second. Yeah.
Thanks a lot.
Take care, everyone.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Brian's had a bunch of links